Hey everybody, welcome back. I, of course, am James R.I. Katie.
I am also Katie.
And together we're Cady and Katie.
Before we do anything else, I couldn't help but notice when I walked in, there's some set issues.
What the? Yeah, I have no idea how this got there.
I'm Cable, and I'm from the future, and I like blowing shit up.
Pew 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 pew! Reach for the sky!
Oh no, Sheriff Deadpool.
You know, you're a lot taller in the—
Shut up, you little asshole. Take this.
Oh! Regeneration powers, activate!
That's not something you say.
Zip it, Cable!
I got the stones to help you.
No!
No biting. They're done already? Oh, wow, that was unrealistically fast. Okay, hit it.
After surviving a near-fatal bovine attack, a disfigured cafeteria chef, Wade Wilson, struggles to fulfill his dream of becoming Maybury's hottest bartender while also learning to cope with his lost sense of taste. Searching to regain his spice for life as well as a flux capacitor, Wade must battle ninjas, the Yakuza, and a pack of sexually aggressive canines as he journeys around the world to discover the importance of family, friendship, and flavor, finding a new taste for adventure and earning the coveted coffee mug title of World's Best Lover. That was, I shit you not, the official synopsis on IMDb up until very recently.
Was it really?
Yes.
Because I was going to say, did we watch the same movie?
So, Katie, what did you think of Deadpool 2?
It was quite hilarious. I feel even better than the first one. After the movie was over, I looked up the runtime just out of curiosity because I got out of the theater fairly sooner than I thought I was going to.
Yep.
And it's only, what, an hour and 40 minutes or something like that?
Yeah, I was shocked when we walked out and it was like, not last night when it was like 9:30 when I got out of the theater. So.
Yeah, I was expecting it to be a longer film. That said, it didn't feel like it was overly short or like too long.
Yep, I agree.
It was hilarious. Mm-hmm. They kind of had found, you know, their niche, if you will, and they knew exactly how far to go with referencing itself, doing the whole fourth wall break, and it was just a very enjoyable film. What did you think of the film?
I would have to generally agree with you. When it comes to movies like this, I mean, I confess that before the first Deadpool film, I was burnt out on Fox Marvel properties to begin with, to the point that I refused to give them money to see Deadpool. I watched it eventually, but I did not pay for it. I was also concerned, initially, not with this movie, but with the first one, that Wade Wilson, in the comics, the way that he's been embraced in the nerd community, it was so old for a while. It's like you go to a convention and everyone is some variation of Deadpool, and you're just like, we get it. It's not original anymore. We know he's like a banner for our kind, but it's like, and I was really worried for the first movie. Enjoyed the first movie. This movie felt like an extension of the first. It was a second story. It had a very similar tone. There were times in which I was a little bit concerned about the self-referencing thing, because just making a reference is not the same as being funny. And in general, I think that they were fine. He was the only one doing it, and that's Deadpool's character, and that's fine. So yeah, I mean, it was very funny. A lot of like really great action for a movie that's touted as it's a comedy. Yeah. Like the fight choreography is stunning. I mean, the first one was very creative in the way that they showed fights too and things like this, but this one has like some really insane moments. Yeah. And it's just really exciting. So yes, I really liked it. So shall we talk casting?
Yes, we shall.
I mean, right off the bat, we should probably talk about Karan Soni as Dopinder, the pinnacle of the film, really, I would say.
I would agree.
He's a returning character from the first movie.
Integral
Taxi driver. Very important. Very well executed by, what did I say his name was? Karan Soni. Yeah, I mean, it was funny to have him back. Obviously, this is a terrible bit. It's not even funny, really. It's like, I don't know why I'm doing this. I'll probably just edit it out.
So we have probably, the most obvious person in the film, other than the unsung hero, Ryan Reynolds himself.
It's Wade Wilson.
As Wade Wilson. I don't remember him in any movie other than this.
Well, that's a common mistake. I think it spawns from the fact that Ryan Reynolds has been Deadpool long before X-Men Origins Wolverine. He was Deadpool in Blade Trinity. He was Deadpool in that one episode of Scrubs. He was Deadpool in Best Friends. Remember that?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You can tell while you're watching either of these movies that it's really a labor of love in the way that a lot of even like good comic book movies don't have that feel. It's very clear that Ryan Reynolds, I mean, he spearheaded this. It wouldn't have been made if it weren't for him.
Yeah.
And he has a lot of fun with the role. And again, he's not really acting.
Actually, in this movie too, he's credited as like one of the 3 writers. He is one of the 3 writers of this film.
That's good. That's good to hear. I was always a little unclear as to like, you can never really tell when he's improvising, when it's written, and if it's written, whether or not he had any major say in it.
And so this time he for sure did.
That's awesome. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Another returning character, Morena Baccarin as Vanessa.
I love her.
I always have a really hard time seeing Morena Baccarin in anything other than Firefly, because that's when I fell in love with her. And her character was really strong, as they all were. And but I mean, she definitely has a chemistry with Ryan Reynolds. That worked in the first movie. I mean, relatively minor part in both films, but when she was on screen, you really felt that these two characters cared for each other. T.J. Miller, noted asshat.
Best known for his role Eugene in the Emoji Movie.
Yes, I would say.
Gene, not Eugene, Gene.
Sure, haven't seen it, don't want to. He returns as the character Weasel. He was in the first movie, a little before we all realized just what a jackass he kind of was.
The character T.J. Miller.
The actor, T.J. Miller.
I feel like I kind of knew that.
No, it didn't surprise me when we all found out that maybe he, assaulted some women, and maybe he called in a bomb threat on a frickin' train because he got in an argument with a woman.
Oh, see, I didn't know about that. I was just talking about how he...
Yeah, no.
Oh, okay, never mind.
I mean, he played a great douchebag on Silicon Valley. And, I liked him in that role. But then you see stand-up. He's a funny man, but not that funny. He was fine in this movie. I mean, his character Weasel is very meek, and he played it well. But it's just like I can't see past the. It's too fresh.
Oh, see, I knew none of that.
Well, yeah. Bitch is going to jail.
Stefan Kapasiak.
Yeah.
Also known as Colossus.
Oh, Colossus! I know who that is.
He could look completely different without, the adamantium shenanigans. But I don't know that I know him from anything.
It is interesting that we never ever see him not metal in these movies. Which it's a fine choice. It doesn't bother me at all. I mean, it seems impractical when you think about it, but at the same time, it's Deadpool. Who cares? I understand that Stefan Chappaquiddick does the voice for Colossus, but he does not do the motion capture. Okay. I'm not sure who does. I couldn't find it anywhere. I didn't look that hard. He has a little bit more of a little beefier of a role here. He's more or less the same. He's like the foil, but he, without getting too spoilery, he has a little bit more influence on Deadpool's arc in this. So, yeah.
I was gonna say tinfoil.
Nice. Brianna Hildebrand as Negasonic Teenage Warhead.
Such a long name.
Yeah, right? Once again, a relatively minor character. I would say that she probably has a few more lines in this. But they're more or less, they're one-liners. Her entire vibe is just to kind of rip on Deadpool in a passive-aggressive teenage girl way.
Right in the title. While
that character does exist in the comics, and according to my research, she's actually developed quite a bit in the last couple of years. Her powers, I can't find any evidence that they do anything like what we see in the movies here. Which is weird, because the ones in the movies make sense for that name. But in the comics, she's like a telepath, telekineticist. I guess she can move through time when she wants to. I don't know.
Interesting. Leslie Uggams is Blind Al, who is amazing.
Yeah,
she in the first one she was great, and this one it's so funny.
Yeah, I mean she's more or less a bit character. She's there entirely for laughs. I mean, one could argue that almost every character is, but yeah, she's a nice old lady. I mean, Leslie Uggams has been kicking around the film industry for 50 years. But yeah, I mean she doesn't do a whole lot in this movie, just like she did in the last one. But most of the jokes revolve around her being blind, and that's fine. If there's anyone that can make a joke at a blind person's expense, it's a blind person. She also did the editing, didn't she?
Did she?
According to the opening credits.
Cinematography. It was cinematography.
You're right, it was cinematography.
It was cinematography. Yeah, those credits.
Yeah. Josh Brolin, our favorite. Definitely don't have any negative memories associated with him. He was more or less an antagonist for most of this film. Mm. He's basically the villain for the first 2 acts. And then, I won't say he has a change of heart, but things come to light. Did a fine job. Obviously, he is beyond the obvious Thanos reference. He's most well known, probably, as the Brad, the older brother in Goonies. Which
was also referenced.
Yes, it was.
One-Eyed Willie.
Which we also did not know was him until we were researching for Avengers a few weeks ago. Mm. And we were both just shocked.
I can see it now, but at the time... So getting into new characters, we have Julian Dennison, who is Russell.
Or Fire Fist, the best mutant name.
I don't know. I think this was like his first role, really. Yeah. I don't know him from anything else.
Very possible.
I mean, he was good. He's a 14-year-old kid starting out and doing movie stuff.
Yeah, he's it's a little hard to talk about his role at all because without spoiling anything. Mm-hmm. So we'll more or less he's a mutant that can make fire with his hands.
Fists even.
Oh, sorry, his fists. And yeah. We're going to do it more later. Getting into one of the best elements, I would say, of the film, the X-Force.
X-Force.
X-Force. Wakanda forever. We have...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Zazie Beetz as Domino. A really fun character. Got a lot of, she got a lot of advertising. Mm-hmm. And it was good to have a I don't want to say female lead because obviously, like, you would argue that Vanessa was the female lead character in the last one. In this one, she's got a decent amount of screen time. She's important to the plot. Really cool superpower, obviously, if anyone knows. Though you could argue it's not a superpower. But
no, it is.
Yeah, I agree. She's super lucky. Things just, I want to end up on top of that building, so she'll just run for the building and things will, like, appear in front of her and in all manner of, like, freaking, what's it called? Rube Goldberg machine fashion. Very fun to watch. And,
I kind of like her a lot.
Yeah.
Knew nothing about her. Still don't really.
Don't think I've seen her in anything else.
And then we have Terry Crews as Bedlam.
The impeccable Terry Crews as Bedlam.
I'm sorry.
I think you meant to say.
I did. I love Terry Crews.
What's not to? It was a little bit weird seeing him play someone not named Terry. Though I don't know what Bedlam's real name is. Maybe it's Terry.
I like to think that they were like, well, it's Terry on the DL.
Bedlam, of course, is a mutant that can manipulate electric fields. He gets his name because those electric fields also include the electric fields that run your brain, so he can make you go crazy and shit. Oh, which is, of course, the perfect role for dramatic psychological actor Terry Crews. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Definitely not known for anything else. Louis Tan as Shatterstar. Just off the record, I fucking hate Shatterstar. I don't know. I didn't know anything about him until a couple of days ago. I did a little bit of research on X-Force.
Oh, I didn't.
Just to sort of familiarize myself. They weren't kidding. He has all the same abilities as Deadpool, but better. But anyway, as lame as the character is, I felt that, what'd they say, Louis Tan did a decent job. The one other thing that I've seen that actor in, I guess he's like really big in like martial arts films and things like that. You've seen him also. One of my favorite scenes in the severely lacking in favorite scenes Iron Fist, he was the drunken master that they fought in China.
Oh, hey.
Yeah.
That was a fantastic
that fight
scene.
was actually enjoyable. Which is, again, I'm reaching here.
And then we have Bill Skarsgård as Zeitgeist. That's why he looked familiar.
Yeah? Bill Skarsgård?
Yes.
You know.
And I always do that. I always see him in stuff, and I'm like, he looks familiar, and I never remember who he is until after.
He's just got one of those punchable faces. He looks like such a bastard. But he's a decent, he's a solid actor. I mean, Hemlock Grove was an show, but he wasn't bad in it. And obviously he was Pennywise, which I don't think in the new It, which I don't think either of us have seen, but the internet lost its shit over it.
I've
So
heard literally nothing but good things.
yeah, so Zeitgeist, for whatever his name is, I guess his powers are he spits some kind of acid. I think in the comics he his powers manifested when he was having his first makeout session. So
That must have been
not
fun.
demonstrated here so much, but still funny. And rounding out the X-Force, the best character on the team, Rob Delaney as Peter. Now, Peter is not a mutant. He does not have any powers, to the best of our knowledge. He just saw their advertisement on Craigslist. I think it was Craigslist.
It was on something.
And thought it sounded like fun.
And he is a gosh darn charming gentleman.
Yeah, nice guy. He's got a real dad vibe. You just want to hug him. So with that out of the way, we should probably give the mandatory spoiler warning.
Spoilers.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is something I knew beforehand. But I definitely need to see Logan.
Yes, you do. I just watched it a couple of days ago.
It literally, I think everyone else in the theater, it was a very sparse showing. It was at 3 p.m. So, I mean, not a lot of people there. Yeah. But the few people that were there had definitely seen Logan. And, I mean, I understood the music box thing. But
it was cute.
that was
I want one. Surely you can buy them now.
Oh,
they must
have to be able to. But that was very funny. Yeah. It had a very literally explosive opening.
Yes. Very literally.
Starting off with an actual bang.
Yep.
The fight sequence that happened initially too kind of set off the whole tone of the fight sequences. They were amazing throughout the whole movie.
Really, really intense, but also the closest. I thought while I was sitting there watching just the opening montage of fight sequences. There's that one scene where it's a flat shot of like a warehouse.
Yep.
The camera's not moving, which is really big in action films these days. But that's one of the things that set it apart in my brain. The camera's not moving, and you just see Deadpool like going in and out of frame, and people are running through, and a guy runs through on fire, and like it's just people are getting stabbed, and decapitated, and shit. And all I could think of was like, this is Dungeons and Dragons level insane. Because I don't know how many of you have played Dungeons and Dragons, but it does not take long for fight scenes to get completely out of hand. You got one guy who's on fire, you got one little bug who's shooting lightning bolts, you got a freaking guy who's 3 times bigger than he should be, and that's all in the first 6 seconds. What a really nice moment. At the beginning of the film, after the fighting montage, he returns home to his lovely wife, I assume at this point, Vanessa. And as he's going in, they go in for an embrace after they have a little lover's quarrel, and they go in for an embrace, and the classic Aha song "Take on Me" is playing in the background, and just as they embrace, there's like a moment of quiet, and then the lyric "I'll be gone in a day or two" plays in the background.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
And I turned to the guy next to me, a friend of ours, and I said, "Foreshadowing?" And then, well, it was really more like a minute or two, but yeah, she dies.
I didn't even notice that.
Related, after she is lying on the ground after being shot, there's a bunch of debris around her, and scattered around her are a couple of like jigsaw puzzle pieces. In the first movie, Deadpool is explaining to Vanessa why he thinks they work so well, and he says something about, we're like jigsaw puzzles. We both have weird curvy edges, but then when you put them together, you can see the picture on top. Mm-hmm. And I guarantee that those puzzle pieces were very deliberately in the shot there.
I really should have watched Deadpool. Like rewatched.
I only watched it for
Deadpool.
the 3rd time yesterday.
Well, that was the thing I think about this movie too, is I loved Deadpool. It was great, and I did see it maybe 3 or 4 times just in general. Mm-hmm. But I think Deadpool 2 is a movie that I would like watch over and over again, like I tend to do. Like just put it on in the background, because it was just, I don't know what about it made it that next level for me, but it was so good. I
can also probably say now that in preparation for this film, because I apparently have way too much time on my hands, my computer's broken at work, so I rewatched literally every Fox, not every Fox Marvel film, but all of the X-Men films. It was a rough week.
I'm sorry.
Right before the death scene.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, you want to put on some porn? And then they cut to them watching the Barbra Streisand classic musical, Yentl, which is decidedly not porn.
Never seen it.
Unless you're really sick. Yentl is also referenced repeatedly throughout the rest of the film, so I'm glad that they threw that in there, especially after saying that they were going to watch porn, because it just made it funnier. But it comes up several other times. running joke, he realizes at some point that Can You Hear Me Papa, one of the big songs from Yentl, sounds suspiciously similar, at least in tune, to Do You Want to Build a Snowman from the classic Disney movie Frozen, which we both love.
So good.
Yeah, they had the baby talk. That's why I assume they were married at this point.
I mean...
It's 2018. Whatever.
They did exchange candy rings in the first movie.
Yes. And apparently we both had the exact thought. Of course, I was informed by my super observance of Take On Me. But, yeah, they were talking about babies, so she was doomed. One of them was doomed.
Yeah.
And one of them can't die, so my money was on the other one.
Yeah, that's a theme. I wonder if it's gonna continue through other movies. Although I'm not sure what other superhero movie would have that.
It's the one day away from retirement thing.
Yeah.
It's always, if your life is shit, you're safe. Because nobody cares if you die. That's why the writers are the real villains.
It reminded me of Age of Ultron. When Hawkeye was like, I have to redo the kitchen, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, he's gonna die!
Hawkeye cannot catch a fucking break.
He's gonna die!
Even in a movie that he doesn't even exist in this universe. And they're still ripping on him.
There was a line, when they're in jail, I believe it is at that point, and they have these collars that block their powers.
Yep.
So he's basically helpless and, again, slowly dying of cancer.
His power is just unbridled cancer at that point, as he said, I believe.
Yes, and I forget what the line right before it was, but then he's like, and I mean, just give me a bow and arrow and I'm basically Hawkeye. And I literally out loud said, rude. Well, speaking of characters that aren't necessarily, well, they're in this universe, but aren't necessarily part of the specific Deadpool wheelhouse at the moment, the X-Men.
Yeah.
Being that it was a bit in the first movie where, can't the studio afford to give us like a couple more X-Men?
Big empty mansion.
Big empty mansion full of nobody. And then they have a moment where he's rolling around on Xavier's chair,
yep,
and happens by this door that's open, and lo and behold.
And while he's doing this, he's actively complaining about it. There's still no X-Men around. And then in the doorway, you can see like the entire cast of X-Men Apocalypse, well, all the X-Men from X-Men Apocalypse just standing there. Now, normally, I would point out that it's kind of weird that all of them are more or less the same age that they were in that movie that supposedly took place in 1983.
I thought the same.
But it's Deadpool, so who fucking cares?
They were there.
Any other X-Men movie, I would tear it apart, but that's kind of the whole point here.
Yeah. Celine Dion.
Remember her?
The whole opening sequence, that song, was totally her.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And she totally did a music video for it as well.
I know.
Apparently, it was one of those things where they were like, Celine Dion will never do this. And Ryan Reynolds was like, let's just ask. So they did, and she was like, yeah, sure. And then they were like, how about a music video also? And she was like, all right. Because she's the best. One of the things I kept doing throughout this movie is I kept like having thoughts like, oh, hey, this reminds me of that thing, or hey, this other thing, or like saying things, and then the character immediately references or says the thing I'm thinking.
Yep.
John Wick. That whole like fight scene and everything.
Well, they overtly reference it.
Well, I know,
the opening credits.
But I thought it. Like I had the thought before it was referenced. I was like, oh my god, this is like that one scene. And
well, yeah, that's Katie. That's your superpower. I've known this about you for years.
That's fair.
If you're a mutant, your power is that you can tell what a movie's going to say before it happens.
There were several times where I literally out loud said the line.
You're still better than Cypher. The worst X-Men. When Wade and Russell are thrown into the icebox, which I guess is Canada's most notorious mutant prison, they are, they're kind of picked on by the other guys because they're all depowered. So, one character that randomly shows up, Black Tom Cassidy, he's been around for a while in the comics. He's the cousin of Banshee. I wondered why, of all times, they would just pick that character to show up here. I mean, yes, he's been a foil for the X-Force on at least one occasion alongside Juggernaut. And then I watched the rest of the movie, and I realized that he was in the movie the same reason that Negasonic Teenage Warhead was in the last movie. Because of the name. All Wade hears is Black Tom Cassidy, just assumes the guy is of African descent, not Black Irish, which he is, and then he just runs with it for the rest of the film. When Cable offs the guy, he accuses him of being a racist for killing a black man. It was It was funny, and I'm glad that they did it.
So, when Cable, not the first time he shows up, but when he shows up in, like, that desert area or whatever, and there are those two dudes, like, chilling out in the truck.
In a very distinctive scene.
Yeah. Alan Tudyk, first of all.
Yeah, I was the only one that caught it, apparently. To be fair, you're looking at the side of his face most of the time. He's got a beard, he has one line, and he does it in a thick redneck accent.
I can tell whenever.
Oh, of course, but he's a chameleon.
And Matt Damon. The other guy was Matt Damon.
That was Matt Damon. Yeah. Okay, I believe you.
Could that have been like a reference? Obviously, it wasn't because Matt Damon wasn't in it. To the Tucker and Dale, that movie that was on Netflix.
If the people in the writers' room didn't at least say, "Hey, this reminds me of that," but yeah, I mean, if they really wanted to reference it, they probably could have gotten the other guy to appear in a Deadpool movie. Because what the hell does he do?
Well,
Sons of Tucson.
But also, then they could have just been like, "But Matt Damon."
When Cable travels back to the past and shows up at the icebox to kill not Wade but Russell, fun little twist. There are a couple of really quick shots where you see his gun up close. I feel like they almost deliberately tried to hide it for a lot of it, because at one point, Deadpool picks up the gun and they zoom in on his hand on the dial, and he deliberately does not turn it to this setting, but the dial very definitely goes up to and stops at 11.
Which I did notice.
Yeah.
The whole movie,
It's
I was
not,
like,
it's not until later
11.
you get a really clear shot where you can see the 11 and the 1 right next to each other, and you're like, yes.
Yep.
But, yeah, I mean, come on. Who doesn't love Spinal Tap?
Well, when they showed that it had a dial, I was like, oh my god, turn it to 11.
Yeah, it's always 11.
When he was putting that whole gun together and everything, I think it was that one. It looked very much like one of the rifles that Winter Soldier had at one point. It didn't help that metal left arm. When he first showed up, I immediately was like, oh my god, Winter Soldier. Everyone has a metal arm.
Really? I thought Luke Skywalker? I'm kidding.
Which literally was referenced as well, where Deadpool at one point was like, oh, why does everyone get Winter Soldier's arm? Oh, so good.
One of the many meta references that didn't necessarily land right with me, in part because I saw it in the trailer, and I was like, this is fine for the trailer, but I'd almost prefer it not actually end up in the movie. Cable's explaining his incredibly depressing backstory, and Deadpool says, oh, that's so dark. Are you sure you're not from the DC universe? And while I get the joke, and it's probably funnier, and, general audiences, let's be honest here, the X-Men films as a whole, they get pretty dark at times too. They don't have the lightheartedness that you get with like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but I guess that's what the DCEU is known for. And obviously, he already references the other X-Men films enough. So I don't know. It's just a thought.
I think it might have also been DC kind of sucks, so let's just make fun of them some more kind of thing.
Well, yeah, but by that same token, the Marvel Cinematic Universe doesn't suck, and they make plenty of fun of that too.
That's true. No holds barred. Dubstep is hilarious.
I know Jack's films.
But
Hi, Jax.
Regardless, doesn't always solve everything. Loses you some fights sometimes, but makes pretty good fighting sequences.
I personally do not care for dubstep, but I love that Deadpool does. It just makes perfect sense.
It makes it worse that the dubstep they used was Skrillex.
Oh, of course it was. I knew that after I looked it up. But
I recognized it. I kind of like dubstep a little bit. Yeah. Anyway, I just thought it was hilarious.
I don't do DMT that often.
That's fine.
In the end, Deadpool manages to escape the prison by pulling a pin or something on one of Cable's grenades, which blows them both through the wall, and they fall. It's just an incredibly long and painful fall.
Shit.
And I could not... You're on the same page. All I could think about was that one scene from the vastly underrated 2007 Andy Samberg vehicle, Hot Rod. Yep. And, yeah, I'm just going to cut to it. Delightful.
So there was one moment in the prison, too, where I was kind of not confused about why what happened. He grabs cables, like some of the wires that are hanging down from the prison computers, and finds out what cell Deadpool and Russell are in.
Okay.
And I was like, I guess so, because robot hands.
He's from the future, cybernetics and all that shit. You never know.
So the reason he has all of that metal is because of a techno-organic infection that he has. That he actually it was inflicted upon him by Apocalypse in the future. So it turns some of the organic material into techno-organic material.
I blame Tony Stark.
Which manifests.
He started it.
Which manifests as a silver blue looking metal. So that's what that whole thing was.
That makes sense.
But yeah, that's how that apparently is possible, at least the comics, the techno interfacing shenanigans.
While we're on the subject, they do not mention at all Cable's parenthood from the comics. In the comics, he is, I guess he's the son of Scott Summers and not technically Jean Grey's her clone, whose name I'm spacing on right this moment. Madeline Pryor. Madeline Pryor, a clone of Jean Grey. Then yeah, they don't talk about it here. They don't really need to. In fact, anything that they can do to keep themselves away, at least for a serious character like Cable, from the previous X-Men films, I say is a win.
Yes.
It's fun to rip on them, but don't... No. Now, before I saw the film, I watched each of the trailers exactly once, because we decided Katie should be the one to go in knowing things. But I got curious, and a couple of days ago, I took a few minutes to just sort of glance at the Marvel Wiki entry for X-Force and the associated characters. And I can honestly say, I'm not sure I've ever more efficiently wasted my time, because they, with one notable exception, Domino, they die almost immediately, and it's just fucking great, because the trailers, they gave no indication. They actually made it seem like it was going to be a team-up movie. My only takeaways from my research were that Shatterstar sucks, and Vanisher, who was Brad Pitt, apparently.
Fucking Brad Pitt.
The invisible character was Brad Pitt.
The whole time.
As that scene was going on, the first one died, and I was like, wait, what is happening?
Well, it happened so quick, too, I wasn't sure.
They jump out of the plane, and they all fire their parachutes, and I guess no one checked the weather, because there was like a strong breeze, and Terry Crews gets hit by a bus. I don't remember what happened to Shatterstar. The Vanisher hits power lines, and then of all things, freaking Zeitgeist lands in a running wood chipper. Oh,
Shatterstar was a helicopter.
That's right. Yes, that's right. And then Peter runs over to help him, and as he's being disemboweled, he vomits all over Peter, and he melts. It's great. And then it's just back to Deadpool and Domino.
I think it was a sequence right before they were actually holding auditions for the X-Force.
Yep.
But there was... One of the lines was just funny, where I think they were talking to Alien McAlienface, who's just a better version of Shatterstar, sure. Where they were talking about him, and Deadpool was like, I would love to find a place where I could just be better at everything, and the best or something, and T.J. Miller was like, isn't that just Canada? And he was like, you shut your mouth about Canada. It was just, I would like to think that was like an ad-libbed line, and it was just like, just keep it in, it's fine. There was a line at one point, I think right before they were doing that, where Deadpool said that they need to find people who are young enough to carry the franchise for 10 to 12 years. And it was just accurate and hilarious.
Yep, totally applicable.
It was funny.
Especially in light of the fact that this may very well be the last actual Fox-produced Marvel film. I mean, there are others in the works, but once they get acquired by whoever acquires them, I assume that certain things will change. Speaking of Domino... I mean, obviously they rip on her powers for a good long time because luck's not a superpower.
Yes, it is.
It's the best superpower in the world. And I think at one point someone says, who even thought of that? And my only response, and this is really nerdy and you're not going to relate at all, but was Larry Niven. It's just a little interesting factoid. Larry Niven was a sci-fi writer. He's still alive. But he wrote a series of books called Ringworld back in the 70s, I think. And one of the main characters was bred for luck. You find out during the story that, like, she was the product of, like, several generations worth of, like, selective lottery-based reproduction because they were trying to breed the luckiest person in the universe. I also can't help but think of the Douglas Adams series, Dirk Gently, and the holistic detective thing, because Domino is basically a holistic superhero. Huh.
I like that.
Right?
Yeah. Also, it's kind of interesting, too, that we mentioned, like, the Rube Goldberg machine and, like, the whole luck thing, and dominoes could just, the domino effect.
That's a fair point, yeah. I mean, dominoes are basically the lowest common denominator Rube Goldberg machine. I spent a good chunk of this film thinking how overtly referential so much of the cinematography revolving around Cable and things like that was clearly inspired by, based on Terminator. I mean, anyone who's seen those movies couldn't possibly not make the connection. The time travel thing, he shows up in the desert.
Literally, Cable equals Terminator?
Exactly. He's got the weird eye thing and everything. But one thing that I really appreciated was that they never directly referenced it until they did. But the amount of self-control it took to get to, like, the middle of the third act before Ryan Reynolds finally said something about Terminator.
When?
I don't remember the exact line. I didn't write it down. I only wrote...
Oh, I remember what it was. I'm sorry. It was he called Russell John Connor.
That's the one. Yes,
yeah.
yes. I almost hoped that they would make it through the movie and not bring it up at all, because it would just be so weird, because that's the movie's whole shtick. And it's like you almost see the references coming a lot of the time. And then they finally did, and I was like, well, I at least respect their restraint. It took them this long.
In the prison, when Russell goes and takes the tray of food to his friend in the cage, I'm sitting there and I'm like, who could this possibly be? Like, going through characters that they, like, might bring up.
I'd be lying if I said that I didn't fully suspect that it was him.
I couldn't even, like, fathom who it could be. And then it got to the part where they were on the actual, like, right before the reveal, where, like, it showed, like, a bit of him behind the thing, and I was like, oh my god, it's Juggernaut. And then it was Juggernaut. And then he didn't say Juggernaut, bitch, and I was like, oh, that's fine, whatever. But, like, I was like, is he gonna jump up and say? He couldn't. But it was I don't know. It was weird.
You know why he didn't say Juggernaut, bitch?
I'm Juggernaut.
Because Juggernaut in The Last Stand, the only other film representation of Juggernaut, said that line.
No, I know.
And they did not want to put themselves anywhere near that.
That's fair.
This Juggernaut was a badass. He was weirdly entertaining. Apparently voiced by himself, according to the credits. I believe it was actually Ryan Reynolds doing the voice. Obviously it was modulated, but
right.
I'm pretty sure it was him. But on the subject of Juggernaut,
yes,
great to see him. He was very entertaining. He ripped our hero literally in half. That was great. Led to the baby leg scene. But
my next note was baby legs.
Baby penis.
So getting ripped in half by Juggernaut leads to arguably one of the silliest scenes in the movie.
Yep.
The baby legs.
Well, they had to after they had the baby hand in the last one. How can we top this? Baby legs. And baby dick. Nothing more really needs to be said. There are a couple of times that Deadpool makes jokes specifically at younger characters' expense. He calls Russell... He asks him why he's dressed like the Unabomber at one point, and then he refers to Negasonic Teenage Warhead as Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and my first thought was, those characters aren't going to get that reference. And then I thought about it for less than a second, and I was just like, wait a minute. James, those jokes aren't for the characters. They're not even for us. They're for Ryan Reynolds.
All the references that happen in this movie are fantastic, and there were a few made in regards to, like, Avengers specifically.
Yeah.
There was one where, with the Juggernaut, when he was trying to, like, kind of reason with him and talk with him, where he was like, big guy.
I forgot about that.
Big guy, sun's getting real low.
Hey, big guy, sun's getting real low.
Which is great, which, if you're not aware, is what Black Widow and at one point Thor said to Hulk to try to get him to calm down and turn back into Banner.
And this sort of brings me back to what I was saying earlier about reference versus wit.
Yeah.
That is a subtle reference that unless you've watched those movies, you won't necessarily get.
Yeah.
Calling Josh Brolin Thanos, a person who hasn't seen the movies might even get. I mean, if they've read comics or things like that. Though Thanos is a relatively obscure character if you're not, like, really...
One-Eyed Willy, really, then.
One-Eyed Willy was... Yeah. If he'd called Josh Brolin the Goonies, or Goonie, or something like that, it wouldn't have worked so well. Those are the ones that it's like, to a normal person, it just seems like a weird thing to say.
Yeah. I thought
and
it was... I loved it.
It really did. I lolled.
And actually, in that sequence, when he's running to block the bullet, I think that was the point where The Sun Will Come Out from Annie was playing.
Yeah, I know them. I know this. I can hear the song in my head.
Yeah.
It was a slow... Well, I guess it was just a slower part of the song.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. It was around that part.
It was right in that area.
But it really worked when it happened.
Yeah.
I wish I could remember specifically exactly what was happening.
I don't feel like it was when he was jumping, but it was definitely during that. But it stuck out to me because not only is it The Sun Will Come Out Tomorrow from Annie, but it is from my specific favorite version of Annie from 1999 that starred Kathy Bates. Alan Cumming was in it. The guy whose name I can never remember who played Daddy Warbucks, who was in Alias. Like, I fucking love that movie. I've watched... It was one of those movies that I would, like, put on to fall asleep to. Like, it was amazing. It made me very happy that was the version. That's all.
I've seen Annie on stage one time when I was like 7.
So the music in general too is wildly out of place and yet super
That's
in
why
place,
it works. Yeah.
and just great as well. And I was looking through some of the stuff like just about the movie in general when I was looking up Celine Dion, working with them too. The music, the score album is the first score album to ever receive an explicit, like a parental explicit.
And I know
warning.
exactly the song they're talking about. Yes, the track that plays during the Juggernaut fight, known as "You Can't Stop This
What?
Oh, no, that's the actual title. You Can't Stop This It's bleeped in the actual title of the song. And the lyrics, it's by Tyler Bates, and it's glorious, and it's subtle enough that even my friend didn't catch it the first time. They play it at the end of the credits for anyone who might have missed it. But the lyrics are effectively, you can't stop it, you can't stop this motherfucker, holy shitballs, 16 times. And it ends on a very elegant, holy shit, all in, like, epic, like, church-style chanting.
So amazing.
Like the Bane fight in Dark Knight Rises, but with much dirtier language. When he finally does take the bullet to save Russell and he goes up to heaven, I didn't notice for sure in earlier scenes, but I feel like he still had the scars on him when he was up there. But then when he passed through the barrier, and I didn't notice it immediately, it wasn't until like a couple of shots later that I noticed that all his scars.
The second he walked through, I was like,
it was a nice little touch. Like I said, the movie, labor of love. A lot of people very clearly care about what they're doing here. It's very well crafted.
in that sequence too, when Vanessa was saying, you know, it's actually not your time to go. You know, you have to go back to your family. I don't remember. It was before this point too, but it had become the F word.
I'm pretty sure that the first time that he says it is when they're talking about having kids at the beginning. And he says, I always thought a family is like an F word.
But like, it was so funny. Like,
Yeah,
it
it's
was
sweet.
It was kind of not quite throwaway, but then it came back again later, and you were like, oh, the thing that they said earlier.
As many of the jokes do.
In that sequence too, the Take on Me was playing again.
Yes, in a very beautiful, like a slow, like not even sure what the name is, like sort of one of those Mexican ballad style. Not sure who the singer was, but he pushed out on the high note, which I do not condone. But otherwise, it was delightful.
It makes me kind of sad that I completely missed that it was playing in the beginning, and I'm super mad because that's the sort of thing I love, like that.
Sometimes I'm better than you, once in a great while. Probably one of the most successful gags, I'd say, in the whole movie. Though in some ways it kind of ruins a lot of things, but who cares? It's funny, and Ryan Reynolds has recently said that he's not sure there's ever going to be a Deadpool 3. That's not to say that he's retiring the character, but he just doesn't necessarily see another solo film in the works. If nothing ever does happen again, I'd say this was a fine, he didn't need more than 2 movies. He was fine. He was great. It was a great movie. He even died in it. It didn't take, but he did die a couple of times, in a manner of speaking.
Yeah.
The point I was trying to get to was the post-credit scene. He fixes Cable's time warpy watch and decides that he's going to go back and right all the wrongs in his life, both in universe and out of universe.
Cleaning up the timelines.
I mean, what does he do first? First, he goes back and he sharpens the cream cheese spreader and kills the guy before he can shoot Vanessa.
He saves Pete.
He goes back and he saves Pete.
You go home.
He doesn't save anyone else.
Just
Pete. He pulls Zeitgeist is in the background getting ground up, and he's just like, Pete, just don't go over there. Just
look away.
Just look away.
Go home.
You go home.
And then he
goes back to that scene in X-Men Origins, and he. Of course, that didn't even make sense, because that Deadpool would have just regenerated. I'm thinking too hard. And then the final scene was, of course, him going back and shooting Ryan Reynolds before he can do Green Lantern, which I don't think anyone expected to happen.
Oh,
but it was the most meta it could possibly get, and it was glorious.
You're welcome, Canada.
So, Katie.
Yes.
Would you recommend Deadpool 2?
Not only would I recommend Deadpool 2, I'm going to see it tomorrow for a second time. James.
Yes?
Would you recommend Deadpool 2?
Yes, I would. Let's be honest here. All of my general nitpicks and critiques and my overall technical mindset when it comes to critiquing art really only applies to things that are supposed to be taken with even a degree of seriousness. These movies are not that. I won't say that the comedy is always very cleverly crafted. Sometimes it's just silly. But if you like, first of all, if you like the first film, whether it's for the action or the comedy, you will not dislike this film. If you just like comedy, or even if you just like action, I mean, you could probably go into this movie and not laugh at anything and be like, wow, that fight choreography is really good. So yes, I would absolutely recommend it as easily one of the top 3 X-Men films. Is that it? Got it? Yep. Sweet. All right, well, I guess that's a wrap for Deadpool 2, unless you have anything else you'd like to add.
Go see the movie.
Good one. You know the drill. If you like this video, tell your friends, like, comment, subscribe, etc., etc., etc.
And as always, until next time, we are
Cady and Katie. We'll see you soon.
Do you want to build a snowman? Come on, let's go and play.
Yeah, no, I mean, that totally adds up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Checks out.